This video is sponsored by Scan and Nvidia, who have asked me to play through Death Stranding on an ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 laptop, and to check out the game's DLSS 2.0 implementation, which is enabled throughout this video, with the game running at 1440p. Death Stranding is a game of 3 parts. There are the first few hours where you won't have a clue what's going on. Then the bulk of the game is spent running about an open area, unlocking zones for quick travel and running from A to B delivering parcels. Then finally, the last 5 hours or so are mostly cutscenes as it tries to tie everything together again. I'll be going through it in stages throughout this video. What an incredible game Death Stranding is. I don't have a clue what's going on in it, but it's fascinating nonetheless. I'm somebody who struggles to sit through lengthy cutscenes, of which Death Stranding has plenty, yet I have no trouble in this game. I look forward to every single one. For no matter how normal or boring they may seem when they first start out, I know it's only going to be a matter of time before it goes utterly insane. The question is, when will it go crazy? And what will happen? And how will it ruin any theories I had about what the story was going to be about? I am playing it on an ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 laptop, available from Scan, link in the video's description. It's a compact little 14-inch laptop, but inside it is a powerful 8-core 16-thread Ryzen 4000 series CPU and a GeForce 2060 graphics card, allowing it to run titles like Death Stranding at high settings with ease, especially when DLSS is enabled. So, Death Stranding. When you're not in its numerous lengthy cutscenes, you play as a postman who must deliver parcels, and sometimes bodies. You carry them across a desolate but quite beautiful environment and must avoid falling over. In the first few hours, it plays a bit like QWOP. I was going to fill this video with silly clips like this one, but really the game makes itself such an easy target for this kind of stuff, it doesn't even seem fair to do it. In fact, I think what I like about this game is how seriously it takes itself. A lot of the stuff in this game would be laughable were it not done with such a straight face. It instead ended up feeling profound and even sentimental in ways that a more normal game wouldn't come close to achieving. The number of grown men crying in this game is off the charts, and you know that hours of skilled work from animators was needed every time that woman decides to chow down on a wriggly, savoury snack, of which she does numerous times. You've got curiously aware babies floating about in bottles. You're even told to chuck one of these into an incinerator. Rain makes things grow old, and sometimes the ground becomes oil and scary hands reach out of it to grab you. Strange doesn't even begin to cover it. I found myself raving about it to random people, in awe at the imagination that must have gone into making it. And it is a beautiful game. And it looked particularly crisp running on the G14, because the resolution of its 14-inch screen is 1440p, which is unusually high for such a small screen. I've never used a monitor with so many pixels per inch before. Before trying this laptop out, I didn't even know if the human eye would be able to see the pixels at this sort of density, and it turns out it can't, not easily at least. It's more like the quality you'd expect from a phone than from a monitor. That is, a display so sharp and crisp, it's no longer like a conventional screen. Text looks wonderfully smooth and crisp, and it's given me an appreciation for white patches, now that I'm aware of how grid-lined a normal monitor looks in comparison. But a high resolution is no good if the laptop isn't powerful enough to run it. Fortunately, the G14 is. At maximum settings, 1440p, it was handling Death Stranding at over 50 FPS average. But enabling DLSS helped it achieve higher still, going well beyond the 60 FPS mark and even towards triple digits. Death Stranding is the latest title to support DLSS 2.0. I have covered this technology numerous times in the past, and its implementation in this game is equally impressive. By rendering at a lower resolution than by using AI, past frames and motion vectors, it upscales the image, resulting in similar quality to native resolution, plus smooth anti-aliasing, less shimmering between frames, and at a significantly higher frame rate. In this early cutscene, I compared it to Temporal, which is a more conventional style of anti-aliasing. Despite rendering at a much lower resolution, the detail with DLSS is comparable with native resolution, but there are other subtle differences if you compare the frames, particularly in the way it renders hair and grass. Temporal gives individual strands a more translucent, wispy look, while DLSS generally makes them look thicker and with fewer visible floating pixels. But in addition to excellent anti-aliasing, DLSS is also a lot more stable in motion. Things no longer flicker, distant scenery appears stable, and not shimmering in and out of existence. This all makes DLSS far less distracting in action than if playing with Temporal, or with no anti-aliasing at all. And you can see from Daryl's beard here that it makes it appear more in focus, while Temporal retains detail from previous frames, which gives the effect of it being out of focus, or ghosting. In my opinion, having DLSS enabled is pretty much a no-brainer. I played through the majority of this game with it set to quality mode. But while it's the best option overall, there are a few weaknesses to it, which I'll discuss here. DLSS makes the first frame of every scene render at a much lower resolution. This isn't a problem in gameplay, what with it being a continuous stream of images, but in cutscenes, this lower resolution image will be evident on the first frame of every new camera angle shown. You can really see this on her eyebrows in this example. However, more detail is quickly added and the image soon matches or surpasses the quality of temporal anti-aliasing. And that will be the case with 99.9% of the frames that you'll see in game. I'd argue that this isn't too big of a problem, since you're unlikely to notice this unless you pause a recording at the right moment. But there is one weakness to DLSS that is worth noting. DLSS would often leave distinctly grainy trails behind anything dark as it moved across the sky, and this effect can be prominent. Some of these tails can stretch a considerable way across the screen, and can exist for quite some time. I'll admit, if it could get away with it anywhere, then it would be in Death Stranding, a game with lots of floaty grainy effects everywhere already. It could be mistaken for motion blur, where not so inconsistently applied. You can see what it looks like here. It's mostly noticeable when you're travelling along roads, which unfortunately have a lot of black blobs floating upwards into the sky, which is the worst case scenario for DLSS. It's one of those things that a lot of people will notice, but might not know it's an unwanted bug. So bear that in mind, as it's the one thing that DLSS suffers from that the other methods don't. But elsewhere in the image and in the bulk of the gameplay, DLSS will still provide a superior image quality and frame rate to the alternatives. So DLSS works sort of like anti-aliasing, but it also makes the game run faster. But how much faster? For this, I benchmarked this whole incredibly long cutscene. And then I learned the hard way that all cutscenes are capped at 60 FPS. So I then decided to benchmark a section of gameplay. Typically, to avoid inconsistencies, you'd want to run in a straight line for a set amount of time so that each benchmark is as similar to the rest as it can be. But guess what? I learned the hard way that there is no running in a straight line in Death Stranding. When I said earlier that this game plays like QWOP, I meant it. Poor Sam will stumble, trip and fall if you attempt to run at any kind of speed. It was actually a lot of fun to send him falling head over heels. There's not a dull moment in this game. Heading upwards is a challenge. You're continually scouting out the easiest way up, sizing up mounds and avoiding crevasses. If you're lucky, you'll encounter player-placed ladders and ropes to help you on your way, which you can then like and move on from. Downhill is equally fun. I mean, you'll take damage if you fall, but it's kind of worth it for this. And this. And this. Anyway, back to the benchmarking. I attempted to run down the first slope in the same way every time, and the results were as follows. Maxed out at 1440p, the game averaged 56 FPS, enabling DLSS at quality setting upped that to 76 FPS, and performance setting went higher still to 93 FPS average. I would say there's no point in not having DLSS enabled. Having it set to quality will give you better image quality than native resolution on average, and a higher frame rate, while performance will give you slightly less image quality, but much higher frame rates. If this game was just gameplay, I think performance setting would be fine. With that, you can enjoy a decently detailed image with virtually no shimmer as you run about, at much smoother frame rates. But because you spend so much of this game in cutscenes, capped at 60 FPS and staring at people's hairlines, I chose to run the game at DLSS quality mode, because it's the best solution for rendering hair, which seems to be the focus of like 70% of cutscene footage. You'll want robust anti-aliasing for this.
First of March, it's clear to me.
So Death Stranding's gameplay comprises of running about trying not to fall over, transporting things from A to B. But to make this just a little bit harder are the occasional monster attacks. These are made more difficult by the fact that you are unable to see them. You need to plug your baby up to a windmill radar thing and it will point them out to you, and trust me, all this makes more sense than it should. In fact, after the first few hours of strange cutscenes and bizarre quests, the world opens up to you and suddenly you stop seeing this game as strange. It just suddenly makes sense, and feels all the more refreshing because of how different it all is. It's almost like you have to relearn how to play games again with this one, and there's a real sense of progression. Tasks you struggled with at first become a walk in the park once you've gotten some more experience and some advanced equipment to help you with it. This terrifying hostile world gradually becomes more and more like home, until by the end of the game you're confident to go anywhere with anything, save in the fact that you're never far from useful equipment and stations. Once you get the hang of it, it's almost like Assassin's Creed, a large open world that you unlock one zone at a time, which enables all sorts of quick travel and item perks to make it easier the second time you navigate it. But instead of Assassin's Creed's vantage points, you have post depots, and instead of quests, you have parcels to deliver. Most games shy away from simple go from A to B quests, but this game revels in them. In terms of pacing, it's far slower than Assassin's Creed. It's more like Red Dead Redemption 2, with every action taking time and with every item degrading over time. It makes every delivery a daunting task, even if it only involves running across 500 meters of rough terrain. In most games, your character has an invisible, near bottomless inventory, but everything you carry in this game is visible on your person, and the more you carry, the more prepared you'll be, but also the more you'll trip, and the more vulnerable you'll become. It's an odd, unusual mix of gameplay elements, but together with the strange setting, it works and is a remarkably refreshing experience. But the most original part of this game for me was its use of an online connection. You can build items to aid in your travels, but once you unlock a region of a map, suddenly you'll find stuff made by other players and useful equipment that they've left behind, their abandoned vehicles, ladders and ropes. Even the toughest terrain is made easy thanks to items laid out by those who came before you. It took me a while to get my head around the possibilities this enables. It really has the potential to change everything. It transforms Death Stranding from a standard single-player experience into an ever-changing and very much alive world, all without ever meeting another player's character. A lot of the time I think online and multiplayer aspects feel shoehorned into single-player experiences, but it's so well integrated and has such profound gameplay implications in this one, I absolutely love this feature in Death Stranding. I must admit, as I grow older, I find it harder and harder to lose myself in a gaming world. No matter how well new games try to disguise it, I know that everything's pre-made and pre-planned, but to see the names of other players and useful items dropped by them is enough to make it feel fresh again. It's online connectivity for a single player game done right. It enhances the experience. It's not just notes inscribed on walls like in the Talos Principle, and it's not just infrequently dropped time capsules like in Subnautica. It really is a new blend of single and multiplayer in a way that truly enhances the experience. I can see other single player games going the same way, and I hope they do. Even if it's something as simple as seeing a friend's name and knowing that you're following in friendly footsteps, or when you happen across Count Dankula's van, it adds something to the experience that transforms this game into a bizarre form of social media. But it's more than that. By experiencing other players' bridges and facilities, it acts almost like a tutorial to educate you about what's good and where. It helps teach you how to play the game by following in the footsteps of those who ventured before you, and it makes me want to leave things for those who come after me. And to complement this is the game's like system. You get likes for completing missions, but also from other players who appreciate the stuff that you've left behind. And you can like other people's stuff as well, if you like. Or you can just ignore it, it's up to you. Here's the thing. It doesn't do anything important, it's nothing more than a high score system and serves little gameplay purpose. And yet, despite that, I found myself using it. If I was lost in the middle of nowhere and stumbled across a bike or life-saving ladder left behind by another player, I'd happily hammer away that like button to show my gratitude. I'd find myself deliberately avoiding strategically placed icons which were clearly only placed to farm likes from passing players. It's petty, pointless even. Yet the game's world gave these things a place, which in turn gave it purpose to me, and the best kind of purpose, the sort of purpose that I've chosen to give purpose to. It's thrilling to get 500 likes from a player who appreciates a road that I built last week, or when I'm lost in the wilderness, to randomly get 20 likes for leaving a car somewhere for somebody else to use. I deliver parcels lost by other players, who were presumably attacked or who had abandoned them in an emergency. I'd never see these other players, I could only imagine the situations they found themselves in. But that was just it got my imagination racing. It suspended my disbelief and made this world feel alive. And I'll admit, it was hugely satisfying to log back in after a few days of being offline, and to be bombarded with 30,000 likes from players who I had helped in some small way. And it gave me enough motivation to spend a few extra hours on this game once it was all done, simply to pave some bridges and to leave behind some well-placed generators, knowing full well that they'd be appreciated by others over the coming days and weeks. The biggest undertaking is to pave stretches of road, which over time transforms terrifying expanses of wilderness into nothing more than a walk in the park. This feature had me raiding enemy camps for hours in order to amass enough metal and ceramic to be able to connect important depots together, shaving minutes off every run I made between them from then on. I will warn you now, you can go over the top with this. Don't expect every bit of road to be worth it in the long run, but it's definitely worth taking the time to connect one or two places together as some weird long-term investment into practical travel and light farming. Believe it or not, there is combat in this game. It's infrequent, and a lot of it is avoidable. On the world map, there are about half a dozen enemy camps filled with evil scavengers. It's worth raiding these occasionally for the thousands of resources that they contain. As the game progresses, you get all sorts of advanced gear to help you in fights, but I didn't care for any of this. I stuck to a rather simplistic bowler gun and it did the job just fine. I actually wish I had more opportunities to use this fantastic device, all without killing a single person. There are a few combat chapters in this game too, and from what I see, they're the only reason for the game to contain the weapons that it does. I'm not going to show these since I feel it would spoil it somewhat, but let's just say you're pitted against waves of enemies and you've got to shoot them all. It's all well and good. Welcome break from delivering parcels, but unlike the depth and complexity involved with the postage system, you soon learn that shooting people in Death Stranding is just the same thing over and over again. And the other kind of enemies are the BTs, who exist wherever there is rain. In theory, you should be able to avoid them with enough sneaking and mouth covering. It's a very different kind of stealth from, say, Metal Gear Solid. It's not about hiding and taking cover, but more about not walking into them and then remaining quiet if they're after you. It all felt a bit approximate to me, but I got pretty good at avoiding them by the end of my playthrough, if I wanted to. Inevitably, there will be times when you're detected, at which point the ground turns to oil and people try to drag you down into it. Should they succeed, a terrifying looking monster will appear and you'll need to run away from it until you escape from the oil again, with stuff like vehicles and buildings bubbling out of it for you to climb onto to aid you in your escape. These scenes look incredibly dramatic, but they're not challenging at all. I went the whole playthrough without dying from them once. In fact, near the end I was trying to initiate them simply to clear the way instead of having to sneak around so much. Unfortunately, the boss battles also feel like a means to an end. You'll be pitted against massive bullet sponge enemies, with infinite conveniently placed weapons and items everywhere. They're not hard, just long and grindy. It's so much like Metal Gear Solid, but it doesn't suit Death Stranding's style quite so well. But aside from the combat, which I didn't feel progressed at all throughout the game, the rest of the game's gameplay does advance, and it does so at a well thought out pace. The game knows when to move on. The whole playthrough is like a tutorial, teaching you the basics of something before giving you a tool that means that you no longer have to micromanage it. You end the game with a huge amount of knowledge, you never feel overwhelmed by your current task, and you're regularly kitted out with more tools than you know what to do with. My preferred method was to kit myself out with the bare minimum and to improvise as I went along. I raided enemy camps without a weapon, hoping to pick one up along the way. And I would run into the wilderness with nothing but faith in my fellow gamers to provide me with what I needed. Thanks for the safe houses, guys. Speaking of the wilderness, I learned another reason to appreciate DLSS when used on a laptop. Most of the time, DLSS is used to enable super high resolutions and frame rates, but what hasn't really been touched on so much is how it can improve portable gaming. Because when you're gaming on a battery, it takes on a whole new set of rules. It instead becomes about maxing out the battery life. The components are significantly underclocked to consume less power, which means you'll be getting less performance than if connected to the mains. But DLSS allows you to claw some of that performance back. By switching to DLSS performance mode, it's effectively like running the game at quarter of the resolution, and it really helped me to run Death Stranding using just the laptop's battery. At maximum settings, I found the sweet spots to be 720p at 60 FPS or 1080p at 30, which simply isn't possible when using traditional techniques like temporal. Alternatively, you can cap the game at 60 FPS when connected to the mains, and DLSS will enable the laptop to hit that performance target with less effort, meaning that the laptop will run cooler and quieter than it would do otherwise. So while most people think of DLSS as something for high resolutions and frame rates, it's also an extremely useful technology for a laptop to support, for reasons of efficiency and portability. Death Stranding's gotten a somewhat unfair reputation as being a walking simulator, and this is unfair because you'll spend just as much time using vehicles. These are either much faster or can carry much more stuff than you can on your own, or some weird blend of the two. They become a necessity if you're taking road building or mission farming seriously, and it's just a shame that they handle so poorly. The bike in particular has got to be one of the most infuriating driving experiences that I have ever encountered. It will bug out on every rock that it touches, it will randomly stop, or won't stop when you want it to, or will start steering the opposite way to the one you want to go. I compiled a montage of clips such as these, because it really was infuriating. In fact, infuriating is an understatement. It was enough to make me rage quit several times, especially when I was trying to escape from bandits or BTs, only for seemingly smooth rocks to hamper my efforts, repeatedly. I don't know how this sort of thing got through testing, as it should have been immediately apparent that this wasn't acceptable, and it's my major gripe with this game. That being said, the bike is excellent for travelling on flat roads or up the side of mountains. It's just everything in between that's the problem. Yes, my favourite bit of the game was the mountain. You see it looming over you for the first half of the game. You know it's going to be big. but upon reaching it about halfway through, it still exceeded all of my expectations by being taller, larger, and more remote than I had anticipated. It's like if Skyrim was made in 2020. It's beautiful, it's terrifying, and when some peaceful music kicks in as you try to navigate down the side of it, it ranks among my favourite gaming memories. That sense of freedom and scale. About how something that looks so simple on the world map can feel so infinite and expansive. The mountains in this game are like what the underwater caves are to Subnautica, and that's the highest praise that I can give. It's almost a shame when you're bothered by enemies up there, but don't worry, you'll have plenty of time away from them when you're simply left to explore and to appreciate the sights. My friend played through this game at about the same time as I did, and because of how weird and original it is, I found myself discussing it at great lengths with him when I'm away from my PC. It's almost like being back at school again, when the anticipation of playing the game is almost as important as actually playing it. We've shared discoveries and advice with each other. The funny thing is, we haven't even seen stuff from each other in the game just yet. The game also reminds me of school because it's eerily like the original Metal Gear Solid. This shouldn't be a surprise, what with it being made by the same guy. But it's everything about this game, its heavy reliance on cutscenes, the fascinating characters you encounter, the endless twists and complicated topics it discusses, and the small details it bothers with that other games wouldn't even consider. I dread to think how long they spent programming smearable mud on faces, or the weird cargo balancing system, or how they've perfected the look of smoke from a recently extinguished candle. Expectations for small touches such as these are much higher than they were back in Metal Gear Solid's day, yet Hideo Kojima and his extremely talented team of developers have still managed to impress me, time and time again. Much like Metal Gear Solid, every character in this game has some unusual character trait and a sob story they can't wait to explain to you in great lengths. I found Hartman's to be particularly engaging and hilariously literal. For me, it hit all the same highs that the fascinating characters I met in Metal Gear Solid did 20 years ago. I wasn't so fond of how keen this game was to break the fourth wall. Hartman literally thumbs up at the camera to give you likes, which I could just about accept as being quirky. But the villain crossed the line by endlessly shouting to me about difficulty levels and save games. A self-aware joke about this all being just a game. He's a walking bundle of the worst character cliches. He's evil so he licks people. He's happy to show off his powers in needless ways, yet doesn't use them when they would benefit him the most. And he can't wait to reveal his evil plans to you in a number of lengthy cutscenes. At some point later on in the game, there's a Tekken minigame which is downright embarrassing. It's highly inappropriate given the gravity of the situation and the power of the people involved. You may be one of the few people to get what it's referencing, but for most people who will be playing this game for this game, it only serves to the detriment to this game's characters and storyline. Something that starts off not being a problem with this game but that slowly becomes increasingly irritating the more you play is the game's slow pace. Some of it is dog slow. The cutscenes are easy to skip, but the end of mission summaries quickly became a click fest as I rushed to skip through them to get back to the gameplay again. It's okay the first dozen or so times, but if you're near the end and are just grinding them out, you don't want the hassle of seeing these screens flashing up over and over. They don't take long to do, and they do have an auto-skip feature, but I just wish it went one step further again by immediately ending the briefing. I personally ended up not caring how many likes I got for each and every part of every delivery, and the mini cutscenes for Sam lying down, getting up, having a shower and getting in and out of vehicles quickly grew old too. You do need to shower and go to the toilet from time to time though, since you can defeat the scariest monsters by chucking processed fecal matter at them, and by downing energy drinks. It's a strange game. I've barely mentioned BB at all. The game does a good job of getting you to grow to love your BB. He'll even give you likes if you drive over bumpy ground, and he'll sadistically giggle as you stumble over some rocks. He doesn't like it when you fall though.
Seriously?
So if you liked Metal Gear Solid, you'll like this game. But things I found frustrating about that game are still present in Death Stranding. I fear what I'm about to say will make every fan of Hideo Kojima hate me, but someone needs to say it. The game's plot is too complicated. And by that I mean that I like the plot, but I wish it had been told in a different manner. There are some games that can tell a complicated story without saying a single word. Half-Life, for instance. And then there's this game, which happily tosses you into a half-hour cutscene to explain something that may or may not prove to be important, or even factually correct. Doing this is a sin when the game's so surreal you have no choice but to believe what you're told. And it kind of sucks when you've worked hard to follow everything that's been said so far, only to be told that you should ignore everything that so-and-so has said to you. I can't remember who told me what about when. I've stored it all away in the same place in my brain. Now I have no choice but to label it all with that big red question mark. The times this happened, I went from sort of knowing what was going on to not having a clue, and I don't think I ever fully recovered during my playthrough. I think plot twists were revealed to me that I had already assumed I was meant to know, while there are others I didn't realise were twists until after reading up about them after the game had ended. I spent the majority of this game being like, yeah, I kind of get it, but please don't quiz me on it. You might be different, but I think I'd need another playthrough to get comfortable with Death Stranding's story. With the film, that's easy to do, and Metal Gear Solid's short enough to get away with it as well. But with a game as long and as grindy as Death Stranding, that's quite an undertaking. And you may disagree with me about this as well, but I would have preferred if it hadn't crammed so much into the main campaign. It goes to great lengths to try and scientifically explain everything, which to me detracted from the surreal magic of it all, which was the appeal of the first few hours for me. I mean, sure, keep all this information in the game, but maybe hide it away in optional data logs and quests and stuff. By shoehorning it all into the main story, and often in the same cutscenes as other stuff, a lot of it ended up feeling overcrowded, as though the game was tripping over itself as it tried to explain everything. I found Death Stranding confusing, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I had no problem with Inception, by the way, which is something this game pays serious homage to. The music, the settings, the themes, I can't imagine Death Stranding would have been what it is without Inception having come first. But if you think that Layered Dreams are confusing, just you wait for the multiverse this game's about to chuck at you. And don't expect a concise ending either. It felt like the game couldn't decide on one, so decided to throw every possible outcome at you for the last 5 or so hours of gameplay. But hidden amongst all that are some truly incredible scenes. Even when I didn't fully understand it, I could still immensely appreciate and enjoy many parts of the game. Running across barren landscapes has never felt so profound. And many of the game's cutscenes were breathtaking. The character faces are a work of art, and I don't think I've ever seen so many men crying in my entire life. Norman Reedus comes across as distant and emotionless for most of this game, which makes it all the more emotional when he shows his feelings. It was quite touching, really, and I'm not afraid to admit that I may have cried a few times as well, enamoured by the ambition of what I was seeing, and by the sheer quality of it all. It made me feel like I was witnessing something important unfolding, and it made me proud that gaming had been chosen as the platform with which to tell it. I think it would be impossible for anybody to complete this game and to not have newfound respect for gaming as a medium, even if they don't understand what the hell is going on. In conclusion, Death Stranding. A strange game indeed, a novel experience, and definitely worth checking out if you liked Hideo Kojima's earlier games and want something deep to sink your teeth into. The game is a slow-paced adventure. You explore the world, you explore the story, and you explore the characters involved. It's not a game that you will finish in a single sitting, and if you do, you're doing it wrong. To make the most of it, it'll likely take weeks to reach the end, by which time most of the world map will feel like home, though you'll probably still be unfamiliar with about half the game's tools and mechanics. The game doesn't make exploration easy, but it's all about the journey, and that makes reaching your destination all the more rewarding, and along the way you'll create memories that you'll fondly remember for a long time to come. And if you're looking for a gaming laptop that has enough power to run titles like Death Stranding, the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 laptop might be what you're looking for. At 14 inches, it's small enough to be easily portable, yet powerful enough to handle modern AAA games. Thanks again to Scan for providing it, and to Nvidia for sponsoring this video. Check out Scan's laptop lineup in the link in this video's description.